The impressive double doors of the Grand Hall, where the Commission on National Integrity held its nationally televised investigative forum, swung open with a gravitas that made every head turn. The pastor, television preacher, businessman, and author Joel Osteen strode through, his impeccably tailored suit catching the harsh studio lights. A slim, leather-bound folder was clutched in his right hand like a testament. Across the dais, the politician Nikki Haley sat at the witness table, her usually confident demeanor intact, completely unaware that in the next 30 seconds, her entire political future would hang by a thread. Mr. Chairman, the pastor, television preacher, businessman, and author Joel Osteen's voice, usually resonant with optimism, now cut through the murmur of the packed hall with an uncharacteristic sharpness. I have evidence that the politician Nikki Haley said something behind closed doors that every American needs to hear, something that changes everything about this nomination. The room fell silent. Network cameras zoomed in. The politician Nikki Haley's hand, reaching for her water glass, froze midair. What happened next would become the most watched public exposé of 2025, a confrontation so explosive that it would trend worldwide within minutes and potentially reshape American politics forever. But before we dive into what the pastor, television preacher, businessman, and author Joel Osteen revealed, if you're watching this from anywhere around the world, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell right now, because what you're about to witness is a masterclass in investigative truth-telling that you won't want to miss. Give this video a like if you appreciate real, unfiltered drama and a courageous pursuit of integrity. And let's jump right into one of the most shocking revelations in recent public history. The tension in that hall was unlike anything veteran reporters had seen in decades. The politician Nikki Haley, nominated for a crucial position in the intelligence community, had sailed through her confirmation hearings for 2 days straight before this commission. Republican commissioners praised her experience. Even some Democrats seemed ready to give her a pass. The mainstream media had already started writing their Haley-confirmed headlines. But the pastor, television preacher, businessman, and author Joel Osteen had been unusually quiet during the first 2 days of hearings. While others offered predictable commentary about policy and procedure, he sat there taking notes, occasionally whispering to his aide, waiting. Now, as he stood at the podium with that folder, everyone realized his silence hadn't been passive. It had been strategic. "Ms. Haley," he began, his voice steady, but with a firm resolve that could cut through any pretense. "Do you remember the closed-door meeting on January 15th, 2025 at the Hay Adams Hotel?" The color drained from the politician Nikki Haley's face just slightly, almost imperceptibly, but the high-definition cameras caught it. Her lawyer leaned in to whisper something, but the politician Nikki Haley waved him off. Big mistake. To understand why this moment mattered so much, we need to understand who these two people really were and why this confrontation would send shockwaves through Washington. The politician Nikki Haley wasn't just another political nominee. At 53 years old, she had built a reputation as a conservative force who had risen from state legislator to governor of South Carolina and U.S. ambassador to the UN. Her supporters saw her as a reformer who would bring efficiency and strength to intelligence agencies. Her critics called her a political operative who would weaponize intelligence for partisan purposes. For the past week, the politician Nikki Haley had been riding high. Her confirmation seemed assured. Republican commissioners lined up to praise her qualifications. She had answered every question smoothly, deflecting Democratic concerns with practiced ease. The conservative media treated her like a conquering hero, someone who would finally bring accountability to what they called the deep state. But the politician Nikki Haley had a weakness, one that few people knew about. She had a habit of saying things in private that she would never say in public. She trusted too easily when she thought she was among friends. And on January 15th, in a private suite at the Hay Adams Hotel, she had made that mistake. On the other side of this confrontation stood the pastor, television preacher, businessman, and author Joel Osteen. And if the politician Nikki Haley had done her homework, she would have known not to underestimate him. At 61, Joel Osteen was a globally recognized figure, celebrated for his inspirational messages and business acumen. But what he brought to this moment was not political power, but a meticulous attention to detail and an unwavering commitment to integrity that belied his public image of perpetual optimism. Before his widespread fame, he had a reputation for thoroughness in strategic communication in building his ministry and publishing empire. The pastor, television preacher, businessman, and author Joel Osteen had grown up in Houston, Texas, watching his father build a successful ministry. He had put himself through rigorous studies, graduating with a profound understanding of communication and influence. He had built a reputation as someone who championed moral conduct and never backed down from what he believed was right, no matter how powerful the opponent. His colleagues and collaborators had quickly learned that Joel Osteen did his homework. While others gave speeches for the cameras, he studied documents. While others tweeted, he investigated. He had a network of sources throughout Washington, people who trusted him because he protected his sources and used information strategically, not recklessly. The meeting at the Hay Adams Hotel had been meant to be secret. The politician Nikki Haley thought she was among allies, donors, and supporters who were backing her nomination. The wine had flowed freely. The conversation had gotten loose. As the politician Nikki Haley, feeling comfortable and confident, had said things she never should have said, what she didn't know was that one person in that room had been recording, not illegally. Washington, D.C. is a one-party consent jurisdiction for recordings. That person, disturbed by what they heard, had reached out to someone they thought could do something about it. That someone was the pastor, television preacher, businessman, and author Joel Osteen. For 3 weeks, the pastor, television preacher, businessman, and author Joel Osteen had sat on this information, verifying it, checking its authenticity, waiting for the perfect moment. He could have leaked it to the media, but that would have allowed the politician Nikki Haley's team to spin it, to create doubt about its authenticity. No, he needed to confront her directly in a setting where she couldn't run, couldn't hide, and couldn't spin. The Commission on National Integrity's public forum was that perfect setting. Network cameras were rolling, major channels were carrying it live, millions of Americans were watching, and the politician Nikki Haley was under oath. The stakes couldn't have been higher. If the politician Nikki Haley was confirmed to this intelligence position, she would have access to the most sensitive secrets in America. She would oversee operations that could affect national security for generations. Her decisions could literally be matters of life and death for intelligence assets around the world. But beyond the immediate stakes of her nomination, this confrontation represented something bigger. It was a clash between the old way of doing things in Washington, backroom deals, private assurances, public denials, and a new generation of public figures who were willing to shine light into those dark corners. The pastor, television preacher, businessman, and author Joel Osteen represented a new breed of influential voice, one who understood that in the age of social media and 24-hour news cycles, the most powerful weapon wasn't money or connections, but truth deployed at the right moment. He had learned from watching previous public hearings that the key to a successful confrontation wasn't just having damaging information. It was knowing how to reveal it for maximum impact. The politician Nikki Haley, for all her intelligence experience, had made a classic mistake. She had assumed that what was said in private would stay private. She had forgotten that in Washington, the most dangerous person in the room isn't the one with the most power, but the one with the most information. As Joel Osteen stood at that podium, folder in hand, he wasn't just holding documents. He was holding the politician Nikki Haley's future, her reputation, and possibly the future direction of American intelligence operations. And he was about to deploy that information with surgical precision. The hall was packed beyond capacity. Commissioners sat in their designated seats, but the public gallery was overflowing. Reporters lined the walls, their phones ready to tweet every revelation. Behind the politician, Nikki Haley, her team of lawyers and advisors sat rigid, knowing something was wrong, but not knowing what. Behind Joel Osteen, his small team watched with quiet confidence. They knew what was coming. The chairman of the commission, an elderly public servant who had been supporting the politician Nikki Haley's nomination, tried to regain control. "Mr. Osteen, please proceed with your questions, but I remind you that unsubstantiated allegations..." "Mr. Chairman," the pastor, television preacher, businessman, and author Joel Osteen interrupted smoothly, "I have no intention of making unsubstantiated allegations. Everything I'm about to reveal is documented, recorded, and verified." The politician Nikki Haley knows exactly what meeting I'm referring to. The question is whether she's going to tell the truth about it now under oath, or whether I'll have to refresh her memory. He opened the folder just enough for the politician Nikki Haley to see the top sheet. Her eyes widened. It was a transcript, and even from across the room, she could see highlighted sections in yellow, her own words captured forever, about to be released into the world. The silence in the hall was so complete you could hear the hum of the network cameras. The politician Nikki Haley shifted in her seat, her confident facade beginning to crack. She reached for her water glass, her hand trembling slightly as she took a sip. The simple act of drinking water had never looked so much like an admission of guilt. "I attend many meetings, Mr. Osteen," the politician Nikki Haley finally said, her voice steady but missing its earlier confidence. "You'll have to be more specific." The pastor, television preacher, businessman, and author Joel Osteen offered a slight, almost imperceptible smile. But it wasn't a friendly smile. It was the smile of an investigator who had just heard exactly the answer he wanted. "Of course, Ms. Haley, let me be very specific. The meeting at the Hay Adams Hotel, Suite 412, January 15th, 2025, 8:47 p.m., 12 people in attendance. You were discussing your plans once confirmed. Ring any bells?" The specificity of his information sent a visible shudder through the politician Nikki Haley's legal team. One of her lawyers stood up. "Mr. Chairman, we object to this line of questioning. Private meetings between Ms. Haley and supporters are not relevant to..." "They are if Ms. Haley made statements about how she intends to use the position she's being confirmed for," Joel Osteen shot back, his voice unwavering. "And they're especially relevant if those statements contradict everything she's told this commission under oath." The chairman banged his gavel half-heartedly. "The witness will answer the question." The politician Nikki Haley leaned into her microphone. "I may have attended a gathering at the Hay Adams. Many supporters wanted to congratulate me on the nomination, but I don't recall saying anything inappropriate or contradictory to my testimony." "You don't recall?" The pastor, television preacher, businessman, and author Joel Osteen repeated, his voice dripping with disbelief. "Ms. Haley, let me help your memory. Do you recall saying, and I quote, 'The intelligence agencies need to be brought to heel. Once I'm in, we're going to have files on every member of Congress who's opposed us. They think Hoover was bad. They haven't seen anything yet.'" The room erupted. Reporters started typing furiously on their phones. Several Democratic commissioners leaned forward in their seats. Even some Republicans looked uncomfortable. The chairman banged his gavel repeatedly, calling for order. The politician Nikki Haley's face had gone from pale to red. "That's taken completely out of context. Out of context?" Joel Osteen pulled out a small digital recorder from his folder. "Mr. Chairman, I'd like to submit this recording into evidence." Ms. Haley's comments begin at the 23-minute mark. The legal implications hit everyone simultaneously. If Joel Osteen had a recording, if the politician Nikki Haley had really said those things, it wasn't just about her nomination anymore. It was about potential criminal conspiracy, abuse of power, and violations of numerous federal statutes. The politician Nikki Haley's lead attorney jumped up. "We object. The provenance of this recording is unknown. It could be doctored, manipulated, which is why," Joel Osteen continued calmly, "I've had it authenticated by 3 independent forensic audio experts. Their reports are in this folder, but Ms. Haley knows it's real. Don't you, Ms. Haley? Because you remember who else was in that room." He pulled out a photograph from his folder, holding it up for the cameras to see. It showed the politician Nikki Haley at a table, wine glass raised, surrounded by faces that anyone who followed politics would recognize. Some of the most powerful donors and operatives in conservative politics. "Should I name them all, Ms. Haley? Should I tell this commission who else heard you say that you would use intelligence resources to," and I quote again, "make sure our enemies in Congress never feel safe again?" The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. This wasn't just about political hardball anymore. This was about someone seeking to weaponize American intelligence agencies against elected officials. It was the kind of thing that ended careers, triggered investigations, and sometimes led to federal prison. The politician Nikki Haley's voice, when she finally spoke, had lost all its earlier authority. "I was speaking hypothetically about reforms and accountability." "Hypothetically?" Joel Osteen pulled out another document. "Then why did you specifically name 5 Democratic senators and 3 Republican ones who you called problems that need to be dealt with? Why did you say we have ways of making people comply that they can't even imagine?" Commissioner Elizabeth Warren, who had been quietly observing, suddenly spoke up. "Mr. Chairman, I move that we immediately postpone this confirmation hearing until these allegations can be fully investigated." "Seconded," called out another Democratic commissioner. The Republican chairman looked like he had aged 5 years in 5 minutes. His prize nominee, the person who was supposed to sail through confirmation, was imploding on national television. We will take a brief recess to consider this motion. Before we do, Joel Osteen said, his voice cutting through the K, I have one more question for Ms. Haley. The room fell silent again. Everyone knew he had been building to something, and this was it. Ms. Haley, in that same meeting, did you or did you not say, Joel Osteen thinks he's smart, but we have a file on him that would end his career tomorrow if we wanted? The personal nature of the threat changed everything. This wasn't just about abstract abuse of power anymore. This was about a nominee threatening a prominent public figure and spiritual leader with blackmail, using intelligence resources she didn't even control yet. The politician, Nikki Haley's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Her lawyers were whispering urgently in her ears, but everyone could see the truth written on her face. She had said it. She had said all of it. I invoke my Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination, the politician Nikki Haley finally stammered. The hearing room exploded. Taking the fifth in a public confirmation hearing was unprecedented. It was an admission of guilt in everything but law. Photographers pushed forward to get shots of the politician Nikki Haley's devastated face. Reporters ran for the doors to file their stories. But Joel Osteen wasn't done. He stood there, calm in the eye of the storm he had created, waiting. When the chaos died down enough for him to be heard, he spoke again. Mr. Chairman, I have 43 minutes of recorded audio from that meeting. I have transcripts. I have witnesses willing to testify. Ms. Haley didn't just threaten me. She outlined a systematic plan to use intelligence resources to intimidate, blackmail, and control elected officials. She named judges she wanted surveilled. She discussed using NSA resources to monitor political opponents. She talked about creating what she called leverage files on journalists who wrote negative stories. He paused, letting each revelation sink in. This isn't about politics anymore. This is about someone who sees our intelligence agencies as her personal secret police force. And the most disturbing part, she seemed to think everyone in that room agreed with her. The implications rippled through the room like a shockwave. If others in that meeting had agreed, if this was a broader conspiracy, this could reach much higher than just the politician Nikki Haley. Senator Ted Cruz, who had been one of the politician Nikki Haley's strongest supporters, stood up, his face grave. Mr. Chairman, I believe we need to immediately refer this matter to the Justice Department. If these allegations are true, we're looking at potential criminal conspiracy. The fact that Cruz, a Republican, was calling for a Justice Department investigation of a Republican nominee showed how seriously everyone was taking this. This had transcended party politics. This was about the fundamental integrity of American democracy. The politician Nikki Haley sat at the witness table looking smaller by the second. Her team of high-powered lawyers and advisors seemed to shrink away from her, as if her political toxicity might be contagious. The woman who had walked into the hearing room expecting to be confirmed was watching her entire life crumble in real time. But Joel Osteen still wasn't finished. He had one more card to play, and it was going to be devastating. Ms. Haley, there's one more thing from that recording I think the commission needs to hear. Would you like to tell them what you said about the chairman of this commission, Mr. Morrison, or should I play that part of the tape? All eyes turned to the chairman, the elderly public servant who had been shepherding the politician Nikki Haley's nomination through the commission. His face had gone ashen. Whatever the politician Nikki Haley had said about him, it clearly wasn't flattering. You said, and I quote, Morrison is an old fool who thinks he's playing chess while we're playing a completely different game. Once I'm confirmed, we'll have enough on him to make him dance like a puppet. The chairman's gavel fell from his hand, clattering on the desk. The betrayal was written across his face. He had been defending the politician Nikki Haley, pushing her nomination, and all the while she had been planning to blackmail him. The hearing room descended into complete chaos. Commissioners were shouting over each other. Photographers were pushing and shoving to get better angles. Reporters were literally running for the exits to file their stories. And through it all, Joel Osteen stood at the podium, calm and composed, the eye of the hurricane he had unleashed. He had spent 3 weeks preparing for this moment, knowing that he had one shot to expose the politician Nikki Haley completely. He had organized the revelations for maximum impact, each one building on the last, creating a cascade of scandals that made it impossible for anyone to defend her. The recess that the chairman had called for stretched from the planned 15 minutes to an hour. Behind closed doors, Republican commissioners were in crisis mode. Their nominee hadn't just imploded, she had potentially implicated some of the party's biggest donors and operatives in a criminal conspiracy. Democrats were barely containing their satisfaction, but they knew this was bigger than political point scoring. This was about protecting the integrity of American intelligence services. When the hearing reconvened, the atmosphere had completely changed. The politician Nikki Haley sat alone at the witness table. Her lawyers had withdrawn, not wanting to be associated with what was about to happen. Her political advisors were nowhere to be seen. She looked like a woman awaiting execution. The chairman, Mr. Morrison, his voice shaking with barely controlled anger, spoke first. Ms. Haley, in light of the evidence presented by the pastor, television preacher, businessman, and author Joel Osteen, do you wish to withdraw your nomination? The politician Nikki Haley leaned into the microphone, and for a moment it looked like she might try to salvage something from the wreckage, but then her shoulders slumped. You need to consult with counsel before. You don't have counsel anymore, Joel Osteen interrupted. They withdrew representation 17 minutes ago. I know because they told the press on their way out. The brutal efficiency of his destruction of the politician Nikki Haley was almost surgical. He had not only exposed her, but had made her so politically toxic that even her own lawyers had abandoned her. Ms. Haley, Joel Osteen continued, moving closer to the witness table, I want to give you one opportunity to come clean. Tell this commission and the American people the truth. Who else was involved in this plan? Who authorized you to make these threats? Because we both know you weren't acting alone. This was the masterstroke. Joel Osteen wasn't just taking down the politician Nikki Haley. He was using her to expose a broader conspiracy. The recording had captured other voices, other people agreeing with the politician Nikki Haley's plans, encouraging her. He was offering her a choice. Go down alone or take others with her. The politician, Nikki Haley's hands were shaking visibly now. The weight of what was happening had fully hit her. Her political career was over. She was likely facing criminal charges. Her only card left to play was cooperation. I want immunity, she said suddenly, her voice cracking. I'll tell you everything, but I want immunity. The hearing room erupted again. Commissioners started shouting over each other. The chairman banged his gavel futilely, but Joel Osteen remained calm, a small, knowing smile playing at his lips. This was exactly what he had been hoping for. That's not our decision to make, Ms. Haley, he said, but I'm sure the Justice Department will be very interested in what you have to say. In the meantime, let me ask you some specific questions. Was David Richardson at that meeting? David Richardson was one of the most powerful lobbyists in Washington, a kingmaker who had helped dozens of politicians rise to power. The mention of his name sent another shockwave through the room. I invoke my Fifth Amendment rights, the politician Nikki Haley repeated, but her voice was defeated. Was Senator Blake Thompson aware of your plans? Blake Thompson was a senior Republican senator, someone being discussed as a potential presidential candidate. If he was involved, Fifth Amendment. Did you have any current intelligence officials helping you compile these leverage files you mentioned? This was perhaps the most serious allegation. If current intelligence officials were already helping the politician Nikki Haley, it meant the conspiracy was already operational. Fifth Amendment. With each refusal to answer, with each invocation of her rights against self-incrimination, the politician Nikki Haley was essentially confirming that Joel Osteen's questions were hitting their marks. The scope of what he had uncovered was becoming clearer, and it was staggering. One last question, Ms. Haley, Joel Osteen said, his voice now deadly serious. Were you ever given classified information about members of Congress before your confirmation? And if so, by whom? The room held its breath. This would be a federal crime, a clear violation of numerous statutes. If the politician Nikki Haley had already been receiving classified intelligence for political purposes, the politician Nikki Haley looked around the room wildly, as if searching for an escape route that didn't exist. I need to speak to the Justice Department. I have information, but I need protection. These people, they're dangerous. They have resources. Ms. Haley, the chairman interrupted sharply. Are you saying you fear for your safety? I'm saying, the politician, Nikki Haley's voice dropped to barely above a whisper, but the microphone still caught it. That the pastor, television preacher, businessman, and author Joel Osteen has no idea how deep this goes. Yes, I said those things. Yes, I was wrong, but I was just a small part of something much bigger. And now that he's exposed it, she trailed off, but the implication was clear. The politician Nikki Haley wasn't the mastermind. She was a foot soldier in something much larger, and now she was terrified of the people above her. Joel Osteen seized the moment. "Mr. Chairman, I move that we immediately place Ms. Haley into protective custody and refer this entire matter to the Justice Department for criminal investigation. I also move that we subpoena all 12 attendees of the January 15th meeting, as well as their communications records." "Seconded," called out multiple commissioners simultaneously. Furthermore, Joel Osteen continued, pulling out yet another document from his seemingly endless folder. "I have here a list of 17 current and former intelligence officials whom Ms. Haley mentioned by name in that recording. Each one needs to be investigated for potential involvement in this conspiracy." He was systematic, thorough, and relentless. This wasn't just about taking down the politician Nikki Haley anymore. It was about exposing and dismantling an entire network that had been planning to subvert American democracy from within. "Mr. Chairman," Commissioner Warren spoke up, "I believe we need to consider the possibility that other nominees currently before various committees might be part of this same conspiracy. We need a full investigation of everyone associated with Ms. Haley and the people at that meeting." The implications kept expanding. If the politician Nikki Haley was part of a broader conspiracy, how many other nominees were involved? How many people currently in government positions were part of this plan? The chairman, still visibly shaken by the revelation that the politician Nikki Haley had been planning to blackmail him, nodded grimly. "The motion is approved. Ms. Haley, you will remain here until federal marshals arrive to take you into protective custody. This hearing is adjourned, but this investigation is just beginning." As the gavel fell, formally ending the politician Nikki Haley's confirmation hearing and likely her freedom, Joel Osteen began gathering his documents. He had done what he came to do, but the look on his face suggested he wasn't finished. This was just the opening salvo in what was going to be a much longer battle. The politician Nikki Haley sat at the witness table, a broken woman. In less than an hour, she had gone from a nominee on the verge of confirmation to a potential federal witness against a criminal conspiracy. The transformation was complete and devastating. But the real triumph wasn't just the politician Nikki Haley's downfall. It was what Joel Osteen had exposed: a systematic plan to weaponize American intelligence agencies for political purposes. He had potentially saved American democracy from a threat that most people hadn't even known existed. As Joel Osteen walked past the politician Nikki Haley's table, he stopped for a moment. "You said you had a file that could end my career," he said quietly, but loud enough for the microphones to pick up. "How's that working out for you?" The politician Nikki Haley couldn't even look at him. She stared at the table, defeated, destroyed, and utterly humiliated. The woman who had planned to be a puppet master was now just a broken puppet herself. Within minutes of the hearing's adjournment, the political world exploded. Joel Osteen's exposé shot to the top of Twitter's trending list worldwide. News networks broke into regular programming with breaking news, nominee takes fifth, fears for safety banners. The video clip of the politician Nikki Haley invoking her Fifth Amendment rights was played on a loop, each replay driving another nail into the coffin of her political career. But this was bigger than just one failed nomination. Within an hour, 3 other nominees for various positions quietly withdrew their nominations. They offered bland statements about wanting to spend more time with family or pursuing other opportunities. But everyone knew the real reason. They were running scared, terrified that they might be the next ones exposed on national television. The reaction was swift and brutal. Memes of the politician Nikki Haley's shock face proliferated. Someone created a remix of her Fifth Amendment responses set to music that got millions of views in hours. But beyond the mockery, there was genuine shock at what had been revealed. Conservative commentators who had been defending the politician Nikki Haley just hours earlier were now in full retreat. "If these allegations are true, this is indefensible," said one prominent Fox News host, who just that morning had called the politician Nikki Haley a patriot being railroaded by the deep state. The speed of the abandonment showed how politically toxic the politician Nikki Haley had become. Liberal commentators were barely containing their glee. "This is what happens when you think you're above the law," one MSNBC analyst said. Joel Osteen didn't just expose Ms. Haley, he exposed an entire culture of corruption and intimidation. But the most significant reactions came from within the government itself. The Attorney General held an emergency press conference announcing the formation of a special task force to investigate what he called potential criminal conspiracy to misuse intelligence resources for political purposes. FBI agents were already serving subpoenas on the 12 people who had attended the Hay Adams meeting. 3 hours after the hearing ended, the first arrest was made. David Richardson, the powerful lobbyist whose name Joel Osteen had mentioned, was taken into custody at his K Street office. The footage of him being led out in handcuffs sent another shockwave through Washington's political establishment. The pastor, television preacher, businessman, and author Joel Osteen held his own press conference that evening. Standing before a packed room of reporters, he was calm and composed, showing none of the exhaustion that must have come from weeks of preparation for this moment. Today wasn't about partisan politics, he began, his voice steady and clear. It was about protecting the fundamental principles of our democracy. No one, regardless of their political affiliation, should be able to weaponize our intelligence agencies against elected officials, journalists, or citizens. A reporter shouted a question. Mr. Osteen, weren't you afraid of retaliation when you decided to expose this? Joel Osteen's expression hardened slightly. Ms. Haley said she had a file on me that could end my career. Well, I'm still here, and she's in federal custody. That should tell you everything you need to know about who should have been afraid. What about the broader conspiracy you've alluded to? How deep does this go? That's for the Justice Department to determine, Joel Osteen replied carefully. But I will say this. What I revealed today is just the tip of the iceberg. There are good people in our intelligence agencies who are horrified by what was being planned, and they're coming forward with information. The American people deserve to know the full truth, and they will. Another reporter asked, "Do you think this reaches higher than Ms. Haley?" Joel Osteen paused, choosing his words carefully. The politician Nikki Haley is not a mastermind. She's a foot soldier who thought she was going to be a general. The real question is who recruited her? Who gave her the impression that she could make these threats with impunity? Those are the questions that need answering. Meanwhile, the politician Nikki Haley herself was in federal custody, reportedly already negotiating an immunity deal. Sources close to the investigation suggested that she was prepared to name names, to expose everyone involved in exchange for protection and reduce charges. The prospect of what she might reveal had powerful people across Washington losing sleep. By the next morning, the story had gone global. Foreign newspapers ran headlines about American democracy in crisis and intelligence conspiracy exposed. Allied nations expressed concern about whether their shared intelligence had been compromised. The damage to America's reputation was severe but necessary. A cancer had been exposed that needed to be removed. The political fallout continued to spread. Senator Blake Thompson, whom Joel Osteen had mentioned during the hearing, held a press conference denying any knowledge of the politician Nikki Haley's plans. But his denial seemed hollow when reporters discovered that he had met privately with the politician Nikki Haley just days before the Hay Adams meeting. Within 48 hours, Thompson announced he would not seek re-election, citing personal reasons. Other dominoes began to fall. A deputy director at the NSA abruptly resigned. A senior FBI official was placed on administrative leave. 3 congressional staffers were subpoenaed by the grand jury that had been rapidly convened. The conspiracy that the politician Nikki Haley had hinted at was proving to be real and extensive. A week after the hearing, the full recording from the Hay Adams meeting was leaked to the press. Whether it was leaked by Joel Osteen's team or by investigators was unclear, but the impact was devastating. The recording revealed not just the politician Nikki Haley's statements, but the enthusiastic agreement of others in the room. Powerful voices could be heard discussing which journalists to target, which judges to surveil, which politicians to blackmail. One particularly damaging segment captured a voice saying, "Once we have the files, they'll vote however we tell them to. We'll own Congress." That speaker was identified as a major Republican donor who had contributed millions to various campaigns. He was arrested the next day on conspiracy charges. The investigation expanded daily. What had started as a confirmation hearing for one nominee had become the largest political scandal in decades. Comparisons to Watergate were inevitable, but many argued this was worse. Watergate was about covering up a burglary. This was about subverting the entire democratic process. Joel Osteen, meanwhile, had become a national figure overnight, beyond his usual sphere. His methodical destruction of the politician Nikki Haley's credibility was studied in universities as a masterclass in strategic communication and ethical investigation. His courage in taking on powerful forces made him a hero to many. There was already talk of him taking on a more direct advocacy role, perhaps heading a major government accountability organization, but he remained focused on the investigation. In subsequent commission hearings and public forums, he continued to reveal information, to ask pointed questions, to pull on threads that unraveled more of the conspiracy. He worked 18-hour days coordinating with prosecutors, protecting witnesses, and ensuring that the full truth came out. 3 weeks after the hearing, the politician Nikki Haley finally broke completely. In exchange for immunity, she provided prosecutors with everything: names, dates, plans, documents. Her testimony revealed a conspiracy that reached into multiple government agencies, several major corporations, and numerous political organizations. The conspiracy had a name: Project Leverage. Its goal was simple and terrifying: to compile blackmail material on every significant political figure in America, thereby allowing a small group of people to control government policy regardless of elections. They had been months away from implementing it when Joel Osteen exposed them. The revelation of Project Leverage sent shockwaves through American society. It wasn't just about partisan politics anymore. It was about a fundamental attempt to subvert democracy itself. The fact that it had gotten so far, that it had recruited people like the politician Nikki Haley, who were on the verge of obtaining powerful positions, showed how vulnerable the system was. Commission hearings on Project Leverage continued for months. Joel Osteen was at the center of many of them, relentlessly pursuing every lead, exposing every connection. He became known for his preparation, his ability to see connections others missed, and his fearlessness in confronting powerful figures. The investigation led to 47 indictments, including several current and former government officials, major political donors, and intelligence operatives. It was the largest criminal conspiracy case in American political history. The trials would go on for years, but the conspiracy itself had been stopped. The reforms that followed were sweeping. New laws were passed to prevent intelligence agencies from being weaponized for political purposes. Oversight of intelligence operations was strengthened. Whistleblower protections were enhanced to encourage people to come forward when they witnessed wrongdoing. But perhaps the most significant change was in political culture itself. The exposure of Project Leverage had shown Americans how close they had come to losing their democracy from within. It led to a renewed appreciation for democratic norms and institutions, and a wariness of anyone who sought to subvert them. The politician Nikki Haley herself became a cautionary tale. Once a rising star in conservative politics, she was now a pariah, living under federal protection, testifying in trial after trial against her former associates. Her family had disowned her. Her former friends wouldn't speak to her. Her life reduced to recounting her crimes again and again. In interviews years later, prosecutors would reveal that the politician Nikki Haley had been both their best and worst witness. Best because her memory was excellent and her knowledge of the conspiracy comprehensive. Worst because juries had such a visceral dislike of her that prosecutors had to be careful not to rely too heavily on her testimony. The trials that followed the hearing resulted in a near-perfect conviction rate. The evidence Joel Osteen had uncovered, combined with the politician Nikki Haley's testimony and the investigation that followed, was overwhelming. Some defendants pleaded guilty immediately, hoping for leniency. Others fought to the end and received decades in federal prison. But the real victory wasn't in the convictions. It was in the preservation of American democracy. Project Leverage had been stopped before it could be implemented. The intelligence agencies remained independent. Elections continued to matter. The system, though tested, had survived. 5 years later, Joel Osteen received the National Defender of Democracy Award for his role in exposing Project Leverage. In his acceptance speech, he said something that resonated across the country. "Courage isn't the absence of fear. I was terrified when I stood up in that hall. I knew I was taking on powerful people who could destroy me. But I was more afraid of what would happen to our country if I stayed silent." He continued, "Every generation faces a test of whether they will preserve democracy for the next generation. This was our test, and whilst we passed it this time, we must remain vigilant. The price of freedom isn't just eternal vigilance. It's the courage to act when vigilance reveals a threat." The impact of the Haley hearing extended far beyond American borders. Other democracies began investigating whether similar conspiracies existed in their countries. International cooperation on intelligence matters was restructured to prevent any nation's agencies from being subverted for political purposes. Academic studies of the hearing and its aftermath identified several key factors that had allowed Joel Osteen to succeed where others might have failed. First, his meticulous preparation. He had spent weeks verifying every piece of information, ensuring that his accusations were bulletproof. Second, his strategic timing. He had waited until the politician Nikki Haley was under oath in a public forum where she couldn't escape or spin the story. Third, his courage. He had risked everything to expose the truth. But perhaps most importantly, he had understood that in the modern age, the most powerful weapon against corruption wasn't force or money, but information deployed at the right moment. He had turned the politician Nikki Haley's own words against her, used her arrogance as a weapon, and exposed not just her, but an entire network of corruption. A year after the hearing, a comprehensive report on Project Leverage was released. It revealed that the conspiracy had been even larger than initially thought. Plans had existed to blackmail not just politicians, but judges, journalists, business leaders, and even religious figures. The goal had been nothing less than complete control of American society by a small group of people. The report also revealed heroes, intelligence officials who had refused to participate, who had secretly documented the conspiracy, who had risked their careers and safety to ensure that evidence survived. The person who had recorded the Hay Adams meeting was revealed to be a young aide who had been horrified by what they heard and had decided to act. They had reached out to Joel Osteen because they knew he would have the courage and platform to use the information. The cultural impact was profound. Movies and documentaries were made about the hearing. Books were written analyzing every aspect of it. It became a touchstone in American political culture, a reminder of how close the country had come to disaster and how one person's moral courage could make all the difference. Joel Osteen himself continued to serve as a prominent public voice, but his role had fundamentally changed. He was no longer just a popular preacher. He had become a guardian of American democracy, someone whom whistleblowers trusted and wrongdoers feared. His office received hundreds of tips about potential corruption, and he investigated each one with the same thoroughness he had brought to the Haley case. The phrase "pulling an Osteen" entered the political lexicon, meaning to thoroughly expose an opponent through meticulous preparation and strategic revelation of information. Political operatives studied his techniques, but few could replicate them. What they often missed was that his success wasn't just about technique, it was about genuine commitment to justice and democracy. The politician Nikki Haley's life after the hearing is a stark contrast. Living under an assumed name and federal protection, she spent her days testifying in trials and her nights in safe houses. Her family had disowned her. Her former friends wouldn't speak to her. She had gone from potential power broker to professional witness, her life reduced to recounting her crimes again and again. In interviews years later, prosecutors would reveal that the politician Nikki Haley had been both their best and worst witness. Best because her memory was excellent and her knowledge of the conspiracy comprehensive. Worst because juries had such a visceral dislike of her that prosecutors had to be careful not to rely too heavily on her testimony. The trials that followed the hearing resulted in a near-perfect conviction rate. The evidence Joel Osteen had uncovered, combined with the politician Nikki Haley's testimony and the investigation that followed, was overwhelming. Some defendants pleaded guilty immediately, hoping for leniency. Others fought to the end and received decades in federal prison. But the real victory wasn't in the convictions. It was in the preservation of American democracy. Project Leverage had been stopped before it could be implemented. The intelligence agencies remained independent. Elections continued to matter. The system, though tested, had survived. 5 years later, Joel Osteen remained a highly influential public figure, often invited to address Congress on matters of integrity and national security. His visibility and moral authority had only grown. In a public address, he returned to the theme of vigilance and courage. What we learned from the Haley hearing, he said, is that democracy's enemies don't always come from outside. Sometimes they wear suits and ties, attend the right parties, say the right things. They count on our complacency, our assumption that it can't happen here. But it can happen here. It almost did happen here. And the only thing that stops it is citizens who are willing to stand up and say, nope, not on our watch. The Haley hearing became required viewing in civics classes across America. Students studied the transcript, analyzed Joel Osteen's questioning technique, and discussed the broader implications for democracy. It became a teaching tool for showing how one person's moral courage could change history. International observers pointed to the hearing as a moment when American democracy proved its resilience. Despite the shocking nature of the conspiracy, the system had worked. A public figure had exposed corruption. The justice system had responded, and the guilty had been punished. It was messy and painful, but it was democracy in action. But perhaps the most lasting impact was on the culture of Washington itself. The old assumption that everyone does it or that corruption was just part of the game had been shattered. The exposure of Project Leverage had shown that there were lines that couldn't be crossed, that there were still people willing to fight for integrity in government. The Hay Adams Hotel, where the fateful meeting had taken place, became an unlikely tourist attraction. The suite where the politician Nikki Haley had made her threats was eventually turned into a small museum dedicated to government accountability. A plaque outside read, "In this room, corruption was exposed and democracy was defended." 10 years after the hearing, Joel Osteen was approached about writing his memoirs. Publishers offered millions for his story. Hollywood wanted to make movies about his life, but he declined most offers, saying he didn't want to profit from doing what he considered his duty. He did eventually write a book, but it wasn't a memoir. It was a handbook for future public servants and citizens on how to investigate corruption, how to protect whistleblowers, and how to stand up to powerful interests. All proceeds went to a foundation supporting government accountability and transparency. The book's introduction contained a line that captured the essence of what had happened. The politician Nikki Haley thought she was going to make history by controlling American democracy from the shadows. Instead, she made history as the woman whose arrogance and corruption led to the greatest expansion of government accountability in a generation. She thought she was playing chess, while everyone else played checkers. She forgot that sometimes someone flips the board. As we reflect on this extraordinary moment in American political history, several lessons emerge. First, that democracy is more fragile than we think, vulnerable to those who would subvert it from within. Second, that courage is contagious. One person's bravery can inspire others to come forward. And third, that preparation and truth are the most powerful weapons against corruption. The confrontation between the pastor, television preacher, businessman, and author Joel Osteen and the politician Nikki Haley will be remembered not just as a dramatic moment of public exposé, but as a turning point in American democracy. It was the moment when a prominent public figure from Houston stood up to a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of power and said, "Not today, not ever." If you've made it this far in this incredible story, you've witnessed one of the most important public confrontations in modern history. The courage Joel Osteen showed, the meticulous preparation he undertook, and the devastating effectiveness of his exposure of corruption should inspire all of us to remain vigilant protectors of democracy. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss another deep dive into the political dramas that shape our world. Give this video a thumbs up if you believe in the importance of government accountability and the courage of people like Joel Osteen, who risk everything to protect our democracy. Share this story with others who need to know how close we came to losing everything and how one person's courage made all the difference. And remember, as Joel Osteen himself said, democracy isn't a spectator sport. It requires all of us to pay attention, to speak up when we see wrongdoing, and to support those brave enough to stand against corruption. The price of freedom truly is eternal vigilance. And stories like this remind us why that vigilance is so essential. Thank you for watching, and never forget, sometimes the most powerful person in the room isn't the one with the most money or the highest position. It's the one with the truth and the courage to speak it. If you appreciate this kind of unfiltered, investigative truth-telling, the drama, the precision, the absolute surgical destruction of corruption, then there's only that one thing left to do. Hit that subscribe button right now, ring the notification bell so you don't miss our next deep dive, and give this video a like if you think the truth should always be exposed. No matter the political passion, drop a comment below and let me know. Who do you think the next arrest will be? Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the next revelation.